Okay. Bezras Hashem. Today's daf is daf Kuf Ches, and we're going to do daf Kuf Zayin Omid Beis. We're talking a fascinating topic over here. We're talking about a katana, a young girl who is getting married to an older person, like somebody like an 8-year-old girl. Imagine. Now, why would Chazal allow an 8-year-old girl to get get married? Well, they permitted it. They wanted it to happen because if a girl lost her father and she was growing up with just a mother and a brother, she potentially could become promiscuous. So in order to prevent that, they encouraged that the mother and the brother should marry her to an older person, and that man would look after her. Hi. Hello. How you doing? Okay, we just began Zion Amud Beis by the Mishnah. Okay, so we're just discussing the topic that we're going with the topic that we're working with. The topic that we're discussing over here is like this: a katana that gets married, her brother and sister marry her off. And we explained why does that happen? Because the father died, and this girl is going to grow up potentially to become a promiscuous woman. Because she's growing up pretty much with no one looking after her. So they encourage that the brother and the mother can marry her off to an older man. Now, if that guy who's married, so imagine a 60-year-old guy says, here's my wife, she's about 8 years old. That's the way it was. And it was a tzaddik who married this girl. But there's license to the girl that if she doesn't want to stay with the marriage, she can just walk out and tell the guy, I don't want you anymore, and she walks out without a get. That's called miyun. She just walks out without a get. And that's how the leniency they made it, because the whole thing was kedushin d'Rabbanan. There is another way. Let's say the guy was married to a bratty girl. So let's say he doesn't want to stay with her anymore. He has the option to give her a get. But there's a very big difference if she walked out of the marriage with a miyun, or if he gave her a get. If she walks out of the marriage with a miyun, it uproots the whole marriage from the beginning. It's almost as if they were never married, and therefore she could potentially go ahead and marry her former father-in-law if she wants to. Because all kroivim are not usher to her, because it's as if she wasn't married. If he got rid of this marriage through a get. So again, then it only works from now on. She has a din like she was married to him, and he will be also on her relatives, and she's also on his relatives. So let's just start the Mishnah, and we'll get a clearer understanding over here. Ezehu katana. The Mishnah begins. Ezehu katana. Who is a katana? That if she wants to get out of this marriage, she's married to a 60-year-old guy and she's 8 years old. She wants to get out of it. So she needs miyun to get out of it. She has to have a refusal, and she has to go maybe in front of people to say, I don't want this guy. But it was unconditional. If she got married by her mother and brother, and she was aware of what they were doing, and initially she agreed to it. But if they married her off, they told her, "Oh, you're now living with this 60-year-old guy." So then she does not have to do miyun. She doesn't have to refuse, because it's as if because that is not even a kedushin at all. That doesn't take any effect, and she doesn't have to even say, "I don't want him anymore." There's no official annulment over here. Rabbi Chanina ben Atignis Oimer, he just adds on that kol tinoikis, if it's, let's say, a 5-year-old kid, right? So if that's not really a marriage, she doesn't know how to watch what it means to be married. She doesn't know how to act like a wife. So then she doesn't have to do miyun. She doesn't have to refuse, because the marriage doesn't even work with Rabbanan. So okay. So Rabbi Loza Oimer. Now I want to point out to you, when the brother and mother married her off, she's like a regular wife, and therefore if she's married to a kohen, she could eat truma midrabanan, and her ma'asiyadayim, and he could make for nidarim and all that. In this ksuba also, it's a regular marriage drabanan. So that is the opinion. That's the normal way we understand what this marriage is all about. Rabbi Lazar says, "Ein masa ketana klum." There's no such a thing of this marriage. It's not a marriage at all. They don't eat truma, and obviously we're talking truma d'Rabbanan, but even truma d'Rabbanan she can't eat. It's like somebody having an affair. We look at it as somebody having an affair with a woman. Nevertheless, if you have this, call it an affair, it's still, if she wants to absolve the marriage, she has to do a miyan, a formal annulment. But Rabbi Lazar says that it's a worthless type of marriage. So Bas Yisrael a Kohen, if she's the daughter of a Yisrael, she's a Kohen. Lo teichel b'truma, she can't eat truma. Bas Kohen li Yisrael, but a daughter of a Kohen to a Jew, teichel b'truma, she can eat truma. It's as if she never left her father's house. So it's not really a marriage. That's the Rabbi Lazar's opinion. New Mishnah, Rabbi Lazar ben Yaakov says, so kol akava shehimin ish. We'll learn what the Gemara is going to say as one of the pshatim in this. If he got rid of her, okay, let's say he gave her get, ki ilu hi ishtoi. Then we look at it, this girl was his wife, and therefore he forever remains also to her relatives. He can't marry her sister. If he got rid of this getana by giving her a get, then he can't marry the sister. But kol akava she'einam ish, if he wasn't responsible for the absolvement of the marriage, or she did miyun, she just annulled the whole thing, so she walked out. Remember, miyun uproots the marriage as if it never happened. Kilu eina ish, this is not of his wife, and therefore he can one day marry her kroivin. He can marry her mother. He can marry her sister. So we'll see more about in the next Mishnah. So the Gemara says, Amar Yehuda v'amid lamastita tani. In the beginning, get miyun. They used to write a formal get when a girl did the formal annulment. They gave her a piece of paper, a proof that she did the annulment. And what does it say in the annulment? She wrote in the annulment that I don't want to remain married to him. I don't like him anymore. I can't stand this guy. But Chazal saw Kaven the Chazi the Nafesh Dibure, and they saw there's too much wording in this particular mi'un. Amri, they said, let's go to Kof Chesam and Aleph. Amri, they said, Ase lachlufi begita. People are going to think that this is the language of a regular get. It's too similar to a regular get. Obviously, it's not the same. Takino hachi, they shortened it. All they have to say in this, piece of paper, beyond Ploina, on this day, Miana Ploinis Pas Ploinis, this little girl annulled the marriage, Ban Pana in front of us. So they didn't make any wording to this Miyam. Tanu Rabbanim. What's called Miyam? Amra, she has to say, I don't want this guy to be my husband anymore. Or maybe she can say, I don't like the fact that my mother and my brother married me off. Pardon me. Yes, okay. Even further than that. Amar Rabbi Yehuda said, even if she's on the collar chair. She's going from the father's house to her husband's house. And she says, and she says, I don't like this guy. But she didn't get off the chair and say, not going through with the marriage and walk home. She just continued sitting in that chair. Zehumiyan, that's called an absolvement of the marriage. There's nothing more to be done. Yes, I came further than another more extension of that idea. Amar Rabbi Yehuda, let's say she's married and her husband invited guests over to the house, right? And she's the one that's giving drinks to them. And they're not and she says, privately, she says, I don't like my husband. Harehu miyan. If that's called a miyan, because she is basically saying she doesn't like this whole business of marriage. So again, she's not making a formal miyan. She didn't go to Bezdin or anything like that. She's just telling her husband's guests, hey, look, I don't like this business of being married. Yes, okay. Another way to do miyan. Omar Rabbi Yosef bar Yehuda, afilu shigra bala eitzachevedi. She went to the store. She went to the grocery store. Lahavi loichefetz mishloi, to buy him something, to get him something from the store. V'amar, she says to the storekeeper, I don't like my husband. And only the one that really sees this is the storekeeper. So there's only one person that heard her say, I hate marriage. That's miyan. There's nothing greater than that. And therefore, she can just walk out of the marriage. Fascinating. You don't need a whole get. Rabbi Chanina ben Tignas, I'm a Kol Tinoikus. I'm Rabbi Yehuda, I'm Rabbi Shmuel, halacha ka Rabbi Chanina ben Hatignas. The halacha is like Rabbi Chanina ben Hatignas, who said that if a girl is 3 or 5 years old, then she's not even married midrabbanan because she doesn't know how to act like a wife. Tana, we learned in a brisa. New Gemara. Tana, we learned in a brisa. Katana shloi miyana va'amda v'nisis. A katana that did not do miyan. Instead of going to a formal, shul or something and say, I don't like my husband, she got another rabbi to marry her off to somebody else. So she didn't do a formal miyan. The fact that she married to somebody else, that shows, she doesn't need a formal miyan. That is her formal miyan. That she went ahead and got married to somebody else. So they asked the question, this katshamal, let's say she only betrothed to somebody else. She only received a kedushin, let's say a ring from somebody, but she didn't formally marry the guy. Is that called a miyan, or does she still have to go to a bezdin? Because technically, we said that miyan means you really technically have to go to in front of 3 people and say, I don't want this guy. But we're saying that sometimes if she does an action that proves that she doesn't want this guy, that could be good enough. So what would happen if she accepted kedushin from somebody else? Toshma katana shleimina v'amdav niskacha mishum Rabbi Yehuda ben Meseira kedusheha hein heimu uneha. Rabbi Yehuda ben Meseira clearly said that if she accepted kedushin from somebody else, that is called the annulment of the previous marriage. Ibaylo. So the Gemara asks, the yeshiva boys ask, pligi rabbanan aleid Rabbi Yehuda ben Meseira. Did they argue against Rabbi Yehuda ben Meseira and hold that it's not an annulment? She really still needs the official annulment. Didn't the rabbanan did not argue? Intim Sulaima Pligi, if you do say they argue Bikidushin, or you feel ben Asuim, would they argue against Rabbi Yehuda ben Meseira on a case where the girl took Kedushin from somebody else? What happens if she married somebody else? Would they agree, would the Rabbanan agree that if she went that distance of marrying somebody else, she doesn't need a formal annulment? The Intim Sulaima Pligi, I feel ben Asuim, even if you say that the Chachamim would argue even by an asuin. They hold that you always need a formal annulment. Just because she married somebody and went to a chuppah and started living with somebody else, she still has to do an annulment of the previous marriage. If the chachamim do argue on that, halacha k'maisei or ein halacha k'maisei, is the halacha like the chachamim, or the halacha is like Rabbi Yehuda ben Meseira, or not? Imtim tzolay halacha k'maisei ben asuin I feel a b'kedushin. So Toshma coming here, Amar Rabbi Yehuda, Amar Shmuel. Halacha ke Rabbi Yehuda ben Meseira. The halacha is like Rabbi Yehuda ben Meseira in all scenarios. Halacha beklada pligi. The Chachamim argue, but we're going to take the minority opinion. And again, what is the minority opinion? A young girl, a 10-year-old girl is married to somebody, and she goes ahead behind the guy's back and marries somebody else. So then we don't call her back and say, honey, you need to go make a formal annulment of your previous marriage. The fact that she went ahead and made nisuin with somebody else, that is enough of a demonstration that she didn't like the first husband. But the Gemara asked about katiti bailach. Maybe Rabbi Yehuda ben Meseira only said that marrying somebody else could only uproot only a case if she was only betrothed to the first guy. But if she's actually married to the first guy, maybe Rabbi Yehuda ben Meseira would agree that no, she needs a formal annulment because she was really married and living with the first guy. Tashma, come in here. The Chalasa, the Abdan, from a story, the daughter-in-laws of Abdan, which were, let's say, young girls about 10 years old. Imrid, they rebelled, and everybody heard that they don't want to remain married to their older men. Shadar Rabbi Zugi the Rabbanim Mivdek. Rabbi sent a pair of Rabbanim to check them out if they really did want to annul their marriage. He sent to make sure that they're going to do the annulment kahalacha. Amrlahu neshay. Women said as the pair of Rabbanim were coming to speak to the young girls. Other women told these young girls, "Chazu gavraycha dekasi." You see, men are coming. Your husbands are coming. Amr lahu. So these young girls said, "Nehavi gavraycha dekhu." Let them be your husbands. So basically, privately, in front of other women, they demonstrate. These young girls demonstrate they hate the idea of being married. Amar Rebbe said, Ein lecha miyan gadol mazeh. There's no greater formal annulment than that. They said it in front of a whole bunch of women that they don't want to stay married. My love, the Hava Nesiva. Doesn't this imply that they were married? So the Gemara says, "Loi to have a mikache kedusha," that really they only were betrothed to the first guy, but not married to the first person. So the Gemara concludes the discussion over here that even if she was married to a first guy, the halacha is like Rabbi Yehuda ben Meseira, that if she goes ahead and marries somebody else, that's an annulment of the first marriage. She doesn't need a formal annulment. So again, what we're learning over here is that often these young girls didn't know or had other ways around to prove that they don't like their marriage. And it doesn't mean that they formally went to Bezdin. Sometimes they're saying it privately to another person or to other women that they don't like being married, or they're talking to the storekeeper, or if they go ahead and ask a rabbi to marry them to somebody else, that's also an annulment of the first marriage. The Gemara says, Rabbi Lazo Oima. So, what is this concept of the first marriage? A very important point. When the 60-year-old guy is marrying this 10-year-old girl, right? Is it according to the way we're going to learn? Is that it's a regular marriage, and it's a regular marriage to Rabbanim. There's everything, that a wife is supposed to do for a husband. That's what she's supposed to do. And all the benefits that a man has from his wife, let's say she wins the lottery, he shares it. That's like her or whatever wages she earns. But Rab Lazar was of the opinion that no, when Chazal made this marriage, it's almost like they made him like a babysitter. And therefore, they're not really marriage, and it's looked at as an affair, that this guy's having an affair, except to get out of it, you need to annul it. But they're not really married. It's not really a Rabbanim. Amar Rav Yehuda Mashmuel. Nobody was consistent with the katana like Rab Lazar. Nobody was consistent of what you're supposed to do. Rab Lazar made that when you're marrying the 60-year-old guy marrying this 10-year-old girl is it's as if they're not really married. It's just like they're babysitters, and he's a babysitter to her. And then when she wants and annuls the marriage, and if she's a bas kohen, she just goes to the mikvah because she had relations with the guy, and then she could eat truma at night. And she's not looked on like a divorced woman or anything like that. She just goes right back home. Tanya Rab Lezer Oimet. You can see it more clearly in this statement of Rab Lezer. Rab Lezer said, "Ein masa katana klum." The fact that a katana is married means nothing. The ein bala, the husband zakoi, does not benefit from loy b'mitziasa, anything that she finds or wins in lottery. Loy b'masi adeha, he has no right for her wages. The loy b'haforos nedar, he has no right to annul any promises that she make. The ein yarsha, he doesn't inherit her. The ein matamala, if he's a kohen, he can't bury her. He can't be involved in her burial. He's not a wife to her. He's like a babysitter. In order for her to get out of the marriage, she has to give a formal refusal. Rabbi Yeshua says, no, it's a real good bona fide marriage. He can get all these things, the benefits of these things. It belongs to him. Chachamim give him the rights to these things. And not only that, he can be, even though it's a kedushin derabanan, he can go ahead and bury his wife. It's just like his wife if he's a kohen. And because she's looked on as a meis mitzvah, everybody views it as his regular wife. She goes out with me. And so it's a fantastic machlokes between Rabbi Yeshua and Rabbi Lezer. Rabbi Yeshua says this marriage is a real marriage, d'Rabbanan, albeit. Rabbi Lezer says it's not really a marriage. It's like somebody who's looking after a young girl. I like Rabbi Lezer's opinion over Rabbi Yeshua's opinion. Rabbi Yeshua is like inconsistent. My chilik, why is Rabbi Yeshua inconsistent? Because Rabbi found Rabbi Yeshua troubling. You call him a marriage, right? So if this little girl, this 10-year-old girl is his wife, tiboy a get. She should need a get. So the Gemara says, well, so why is me good enough? So that's the inconsistency in Rabbi Yeshua. So the Gemara asks, but according to Rabbi Lezer, it's also inconsistent because Rabbi Lezer says they're not really marriage. It's like a babysitter. The Rabbi Lezer name ilavishte, if it's not his wife, miyanami loy teboyah, then she shouldn't need anything from him. She should just walk away and not require a formal annulment. So the Gemara says, but nevertheless, she should go out without anything, without any formal document, annulment document. That's a little strange. So Rabbi Lezer says it's not really his wife. Nevertheless, she doesn't walk out without anything. She still has to go to in front of a bunch of people and say, I don't like this. I don't want to stay married. Rabbi Lezer ben Yaakov, the Mishnah said, Rabbi Lezer ben Yaakov said, Rabbi Lezer ben Yaakov says, if he was the refusal or she was the refusal, what's going on over here? What is Rabbi Lezer ben Yaakov saying? So I told you one pshat, but Rabbi Yehuda ben Shmuel, Rabbi Yehuda ben Shmuel said, if somebody goes over to this 10-year-old girl, she's married to the 60-year-old guy. Another guy comes in and says, hey, would you want to marry me? And she says, Machbis Pleni Bali, I'm really married to somebody, so I can't marry you. Zihi Akovashi min ish, that means that she really considers herself married. And in order for this 10-year-old girl to get rid of the 60-year-old guy, she would have to do a formal annulment. But what happens is she responds to the other guy who's courting her, I can't marry you. I don't find you attractive. So therefore, she doesn't consider herself married. She just doesn't want to marry. She just doesn't want to go with this new guy. So then, Zuhi Akova Shenim and Ish, that's a holdup that has nothing to do with the man. It's just her. In that case, if she is viewing this whole thing as a joke, that means she doesn't consider herself married to this 60-year-old guy. So then, Memela, she can walk out without a formal annulment. So this is what Rabbi Lezer ben Yaakov is saying. Abaya bar Ovin, Rab Chini bar Ovin, the Armei Tavayu, they explain Rabbi Lezer ben Yaakov's statement a little differently. It means like this. A 60-year-old guy is married to this 10-year-old girl, and what's the story? He hates her. She's a brat. So Nasan lo get, if he gives her a get, Zuya kova shimina ish. That means that he caused the whole relationship to fall apart. He gave her a get. So therefore, it looks like they were formally married. It's a formal get, and therefore he can never marry her sister or her mother or anything like that. But Miana boy, so that means he ended the marriage. Miana boy, if she annulled the marriage, so she's the one that caused the marriage to fall apart. Zia kavashena minish. That is not something to do with the man. So when she does it, as I explained to you, if she annuls the marriage, it uproots the marriage from the very beginning. It's almost, she makes it as if it never happened. So therefore, that means that he becomes permitted to marry her relatives because it's almost as if he was never married to her, and she's not looked at as somebody with a grusha because she doesn't have a get. So the Gemara asked, okay, if that's what Rabbi Lezer ben Yaakov is teaching you, but this is precisely what's written in the next Mishnah. If the man caused by dissolvement of the marriage by giving her a get, I'm sorry, if she caused the annulment of the marriage, then there's no, she's mutter and he's mutter in the relatives, but nasul lo get. But if he gave her a get, so this is the teaching of the next Mishnah. So how could Rabbi Lezer ben Yaakov in our Mishnah say the same precise thing that's going to be written in the next Mishnah? Answers the Gemara, Perushe Kamapash. Rabbi Lezer ben Yaakov said a statement, but the next Mishnah is going to explain it more, what he meant to say. Okay, now I just want to, let's first read the Mishnah, start the Mishnah. Hamama'anes be'ish. If a girl, the 10-year-old girl, did a formal annulment to the guy, it uproots the marriage, and it's almost as if they never married, which gives a license for the man to marry this girl's sister. It's not he was never married to her because she annulled the marriage. But nasul lo get, but if he got rid of her by giving her a formal get, So then it's looked upon as if he was married to her. So who also b'krayvasel, he also b'krayvavu, p'solam and akuna. So he's also to marry her relatives, and she's also to marry his relatives, and she's a grusha, so she can never marry a kohen. Now, there's a big difference between miyud and get. As I explained before, that miyud means that you uproot the marriage. Get means that the marriage is over from now and going forward, which means like this. There's a halacha of machzeh grushasei, which means that if a man gives a divorce to his wife and she married somebody else, and then she got divorced from the second guy, he can never take her back. So same thing with this 10-year-old girl, which would be the case if he would divorce this 10-year-old girl and then she married somebody else and got divorced from that second guy, he can never take her back because she got divorced from him. But if she did miyun to him, that's how the first marriage got absolved. And then therefore she was almost review it as if she was never married to the first guy. And then she marries somebody else and that got a divorce from somebody else. That first former husband, whatever, he can take her back because that's not considered machzeh grushasai, taking back your divorcee. But so the Mishnah says like this, an interesting case. Nasan get, if a man gives the 10-year-old this katana a get, and then he took her back. So instead of she married somebody else, he took her back. And then the second thing is, miyun a boy, she did a miyun with him. So he's married. The second time around, this young girl says, I hate him, and walked away from the marriage. And she married somebody else from Sarmal and Skarsha, and she got divorced from that other guy, or got an almana. She's permitted to go back. She's permitted to go back to the first guy because we look at what was the last thing. How did she get rid of the first guy? By doing miyun. Even though he at one time gave her a get, that get is ignored because the miyun that she did proved to everybody that she's a katana, and we ignore the get. But what happens if it was the opposite case? The first time around with this first husband, miyana boy, she did miyun, and then he took her back, and then this nasan get she gave her a get on the second time. Venisas la'acha, then she married somebody else. Venisama niskarsha, and then she got divorced from the second guy. Asura lachsaloi, she's not permitted. So we go to the top of the page, and here's the bottom line rule. Here's the rule. Get achar. If by the first 60-year-old guy, the first time he gave her a get, then she comes back to him, and they get married again, and she walks away from the marriage through a miyun. Then she married somebody else, and now she's free again. Asura lachsaloi, he cannot take her back because I'm sorry. If first she got a get, and the second time the first time she got miyun, the second time she got a get. So we look at the last thing she got. How did she leave the first guy, the first man? She left him with a get. So if she goes ahead and marries somebody else, that first person cannot retake her back. But if she miyun achar get, means the first time she married the guy, she got a get. The second time she walked out of the marriage with a miyun. So now, what was the last thing that she got from this first person that she was married to? A miyun. So then, even if she marries somebody else, she's permitted to go back to the first guy. Buteres lachsoloi. She's permitted to go back to the first guy. Now, the Mishnah just mixes it up a case. Hamame'anes be'ish v'nisas la'achar v'girsha. La'achar u'miyana boy. La'achar v'girsha doesn't matter. Zahakal. This is the rule. So if you take a look at the picture, we'll make the picture here big. Again, she can have this potential situation with 5 different people. Avram married Sarah. She did miyun with Avram. She goes ahead and marries Yitzchak. Okay, Yitzchak gives her a divorce. She goes ahead and marries Yaakov, and Yaakov gives her a miyun. Right? Then she goes ahead and marries Reuven in the picture over here. The fourth guy, he gives her a divorce. And then she goes ahead and marries Shimon, and then she gives a miyun after it. So basically, she has 3 guys she gave miyun to, 2 guys she gave gerushin to. So the Mishnah says the ones that she gave gerushin to, she cannot go back to because they gave her a get. And she subsequently married somebody else. Once they gave her a get, even though she's a katana, if she married somebody else, she cannot return to that husband. But to the ones that she absolved the marriage through miyun, she's permitted to go back. That's what the Gemara is. That's what the Mishnah says. Zahaklal. Here's the rule to remember. All those guys that she left by receiving a get, she cannot return to those guys because she subsequently married somebody else. And therefore, if she marries somebody else, it's called machzir grushasai. But for those people that she left the marriage through mian, annulment, so muteris lachzaloi, she's permitted to go back to him after she got a get from somebody else because it doesn't matter. From the first guy, you were never married because you did mian. So that's what we learn in the Mishnah. So now comes the Gemara and says, Alma, from our Mishnah, you see, asu mian umabatal get. A very interesting thing, that if somebody does mian, and it can be mevatel the get, it nullifies that we consider the get as if it never happened. What does that mean? If a man was married to this girl and gave her a get, then she comes back to him, and then she annuls the marriage through a mian. So then he's permitted to marry her relatives. Because since the second thing that was done here, during the second time they were married, was mian, we ignore that at one time he gave her a get. We say mian, cancels out the fact that he gave a get previously. So that's what we said. So the Gemara says, Raminu, I'll ask you a contradiction. A guy, she was married to one person, she got mian from that person. Then she married somebody else and got a divorce from the guy. And then the third person, she got la'acher umina boy. She did mian with him and whatever. So the Mishnah says, kol sheyotze mena beget, the ones that she went out with a get, she can't asur lachsaloi, but mian muteris lachsaloi. So let's say imagine in case of three people. The first one she gave mian to. The second one she got a get. The third one she got mian. She can go back to the first guy, but not to the second guy, because the second guy she got a get. But the question the Gemara is asking, but since by the third person she got a mian, why don't we say the mian that she got by her third marriage should nullify the get that she got by the second marriage? We don't consider it a get, and therefore she should have potential rights to return back to the second guy. And the Mishnah says no. Also, we see from our Mishnah, loy also mian the chabre, the mian of the third person, ubatal gita the day would not nullify or cancel out the get of the second guy. So what is it? Does mian, if the last thing she did was a mian, does it automatically mevatel cancel out the fact that she did a get previously? So the Mishnah seems to contradict itself from the beginning of the Mishnah to the end of the Mishnah. Amar Rabbi Yehuda, Amar Shmuel, Tavro, you have to break apart the Mishnah. Misha Shanazu, Loi Shanazu. Whoever taught the first part of the Mishnah did not teach the second part of Mishnah. So there are two arguments. Amar Rava, my Kusha, I don't have a difficulty with the Mishnah. You could answer up the Mishnah. The Dilma, I will say there's the difference. Me and the day, Mevatel get the day. If it's one person, the first time he did a get with this lady, with this young girl. The second time he did a mian. So that mian could cancel out the get that he did. And we don't look like she's divorced from him. So we look only at what was the last thing. The last thing done was a mian. That cancels out the get. But mian the chabre loy mevatel get the day. The Gemara says that if she did a mian with her friend, that would not cancel out the get person. And we still don't allow her to marry the person she got a get from. Why should that be any different? So the Gemara says, me and the Chavre the loy mevatel gita delay. I did my me and the Chavre the loy mevatel gita delay. Why not? So the Gemara answers, I did the Makaris Brimizoisav Ukritzoisav Azal Umishabish Umaisila. The Gemara says that we're afraid, listen to this. She got mian from the first guy, a get from the second guy. She goes ahead and marries the third guy. The third guy is going to secretly go to her and say, give mian to the third guy and come back to me. I miss you. So he's going to be a home wrecker. So therefore, Chazal said, no, you can't go back to the middle to second guy because you got to get from him. Because he probably regrets giving her a divorce, and therefore he's going to try to home wreck the fact that she's married to a third guy. So therefore, that wouldn't work. But mian the day, that worked. That's why if there's somebody else, if the third guy would give mian, we wouldn't allow her to go back to the second guy. Mian the day, but if he's the only one that get mian, now we learn the battle git the day, the idea the makaris of alva mashavish maisila. So when the Gemara says that when he gave a get, and then he gave miyun, and then she goes ahead and marries another guy, he's not going to try to convince her to come back to him. Why? Because how did she leave the first guy, that guy? The first guy she left was with a miyun, right? He gave a get, then she comes back to him. He gave her a miyun. She goes ahead and marries another person. And that other person, he's going to try to convince her to get out of that marriage. She walked away from the first marriage. She annulled the first marriage. So she doesn't like this guy. So it's going to be harder to convince her to get out of the second marriage. Therefore, he's not going to, it's very unlikely that he home wrecked the second marriage. Therefore, we allow her to return back to the first guy after he did miyun. We don't look at, we say the miyun that he did last, the first guy, cancels out the fact that he did a get. So the Mishnah is very resolved. Elai kasha, dechavre kasha. If the Mishnah seems to apply that if somebody else did miyun, it could cancel out a get that the first guy did. Because the Mishnah says, the beginning of our Mishnah says, miyun aboy, if he did miyun with the first guy. And he turned her, and he got her back. Nosul get, and she took a get and married somebody else. And she got divorced from the second guy. Asura lachsaloi, she's not permitted to go back to the first guy, because how did she end the first marriage with the first guy? With a get. So we don't allow her to go back to the first guy. So Tama vinis armala oy niskarsha. The whole reason why we don't allow her to return back to the first guy, because she got a get from the second guy. But if she got a miyun from the second guy, mutaris lachsaloi, she's permitted to go back to the first guy. Because once she got a miyun, that shows she's a katana. Every get that she got is canceled out. Doesn't mean anything. Alma also miyun dechavre. Her miyun of her friend could not to cancel out the get that she got. I'll ask you a stira. If someone, the Mishnah says clearly at the end of the Mishnah that if someone got a miyun with another person, she married somebody else and got a divorce, and la'achav by a third guy who miyun and got miyun from the third guy, doesn't matter. Doesn't cancel out the get. She can never go back to guy number two. So you see at the end of the Mishnah, the miyun that she got from her friend doesn't cancel out the get that she got. So how do you explain the Mishnah? First part doesn't agree with the second part of the Mishnah. Amar Ablaza Tavra, you break apart the Mishnah. It's two different people that wrote the Mishnayos. The Mishnah at the end of the Mishnah says that truthfully, that if she got a miyun from somebody else, it could cancel out that a get she got from the first guy. And actually, she could return to the first guy. But once she got 3 gittins, if she married enough people and she got 3 gets in her hand, then we look at her as a real older person, experienced girl, and she can never go back and marry the person that she got a divorce from. So that's what the Mishnah is dealing with. The Gemara continues. Just we'll stop in about 2 minutes, in 1 minute. But let's just see who the Tana is. We'll go to another few more lines till the wide lines at the end of the page. Man Tana, who is the author of our Mishnah? Our author of our Mishnah said that if you do miyun by a second person, it doesn't cancel out a get from a first person. Man Tana, Amar Rav Yehuda, Amar Rav, Maidik said, Memenu b'keser sasinu, eitzeinu b'mchir yabaynu. Sometimes to find a psak, we have to pay good money to find a good rabbi. So the Gemara says, B'shas satziganu, there was a great danger. Nispashka halachazu. We were trying to find the answer to this problem. Again, Hare shiyatzu marishan beget. Let's say she left one person with a get. She left the guy, gave her a get. Umishenu b'miyan. And from the second guy, she was married to the second guy, but she left the second marriage with a miyan, with an annulment. Ma'usha tachsel rishon. Can she go back to the first guy? Do you consider it like machzig rishash? So he's taking back somebody that he gave a divorce to, or the fact that she left the second guy with a miyan demonstrates that she never married somebody else, and therefore it's like Machzir Rishasai who never got married. Sachri Adam Echad. So they hired one person, Baba Meyazuz, they gave him a lot of money to sneak his way into prison, where Rabbi Akiva was. When Vishalu as Rabbi Akiva bebeis asurim, va'asar. Rabbi Akiva said it's asar. As Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseir ben Tzivim va'asar. So they found two Tanoim that said this is asar. Once you got a get, even though from the second marriage you got a miyun, you can never go back to the first guy. But, and here we'll end. Rabbi Shmuel, Rabbi Yosi, Amar Rabbi Shmuel Baraisi, Lezu lo yitzrachani, rachnu. We don't need that. Certainly, she could go back to the first guy. Lisa karasi tarta, lisa lavla kolshkem. A man could absolve a regular ashes ish. We view it as if they're never married. So certainly, when she's married to the second guy and does an annulment, we should also view it as if she was never married. And therefore, the first guy who gave her a get, we can't view it that he's being over like a law of marrying Machzir Rishasai. Meaning, according to Rabbi Shmuel Bar Yosi, annuls the marriage as if it never happened, and therefore she can go back to the first guy. So you see what from this Gemara, how they risk their lives to get an answer to this question of annulment and gerushin. Okay.
Yishkach.
Yeah.
Very interesting.
Very good.
We don't have these issues that a 60-year-old guy will marry a